Somewhere, I'm just envisioning CNN's Van Jones crying this morning, listening to Green Day on loop, like it's 1998 all over again. I just had this vision in my head on a Monday morning of that taking place. But either way, a historic less than 24 hours. Still, nobody has heard a peep from Joe Biden outside of a post on social media yesterday announcing he's not running for re-election. Kamala Harris looks to be the choice. Joe Biden has endorsed her as the heir apparent. The question is that where the powers that be in the Democratic Party want to go? Or is it going to take some polling and some proof over the next month to basically run Kamala Harris as a candidate for the next 4 weeks before their convention and then figure out whether or not she's the best option? Because that's where we're at right now. 4 weeks from today, Democratic convention begins in Chicago. And this is a perfect 4-week run to figure out, if you're the Democrats, whether or not she is the best option at the top of the ticket. I don't think she is. However, she's a better option than Joe Biden. And that's why if you're Donald Trump today, you're more concerned than you were 24 hours ago. Donald Trump was coasting to a win against Joe Biden. That's indisputable based on all the polling. At this point 4 years ago, Donald Trump was down almost double digits to Joe Biden, and he almost pulled off a win. All the polling for the better part of a month and a half has shown him up nationally, which is unusual for a Republican. A Republican, we mentioned this, I think it was a week or two ago, but to put this in perspective, a Republican has not been leading in national polling this late in a race since George W. Bush, July of 2000. It has been 24 years since a Republican was polling this well nationally in a presidential race. So Trump was cruising to re-election, and those numbers were prior to him nearly being killed last week. So if you're Trump, you got to be sitting here right now and saying, okay, he should still feel good about his chances going up against a Kamala Harris, but at the same time, he should not be feeling as good as he was when he woke up yesterday morning. Not because Kamala is the toughest candidate he could go up against, but it's kind of like the Chiefs, right? If the Chiefs are, 8-0 middle of the season, and they're getting set to take on, the Tennessee Titans. I don't think they're going to be any good this year. They can't get too cocky. They can't get too confident. They should not be in a position where they're like, oh, man, we got this one in the bag. You never want to feel that way in sports, and you don't want to feel that way in politics. So if you're Trump, you've got to run, and if you're Trump's people, you would be wise to run this campaign like you're 5 points behind, not 5 points ahead. And that means discipline, discipline, discipline at the very top of the ticket. Now, I just got this text, by the way, here in the last couple of minutes from Eric Erickson, who was just on the show last hour. He's a talk show host down in Atlanta. And he said, Pete, right after we got off the phone, the Atlanta Journal-Constitution dropped a new poll. It shows Donald Trump 5 points up on Kamala Harris in Georgia, but he was up 7 over Joe Biden. So, once again, that proves the point that Trump can still feel good about where he's at going into this election cycle against a theoretical Kamala Harris, but it is tougher than it was 24 hours ago. Because also what's going to happen now is Trump's going to be in a position where the media is going to go back to being friends with the Democrats. It was a nice month, right, where the media actually pretended like it was an honest arbiter of the news cycle. They never were. They just wanted Joe out after that debate because it made them look bad. It made the party look bad. It brought Trump back into the equation. It gave him a bigger lead. They don't want any of that. So for a month, they basically figured out a way to help the Democratic powers get Joe out. And they accomplished their goal. So now we're going to get fed a bunch of nonsense about how, Kamala Harris is the greatest candidate ever. And if you question Kamala Harris, yeah, you're probably a racist. I trust that's coming. If you don't think that's coming, you're kidding yourself, okay? So Trump's got to be smart. He's got to stay confident. He's got to stay on the ball. He's got to stay measured. And frankly, you know what Trump would be best off doing for the next month? Month and a half. play golf. Trump has been doing great by not being the center of attention, outside of when he almost got killed. I know Trump himself probably doesn't want to hear that, but that's the reality. He does better when he's not the center of attention because people don't think as much about him emotionally. They kind of say, yeah, his policies were really good. And at this point in time, after the way the last few months have played out, with Joe Biden's Department of Justice going after this guy legally, with him nearly being killed, with Secret Service apparently having multiple screw-ups to lead to him nearly being killed, there are people, and many of you, and many of us, who are going to run to the polls on November 5th or in early voting, which go early vote if you want to. Okay, that's how the game is played. Go do it on behalf of Donald Trump. But do not forget, he also is going to need people in suburban Atlanta. He's going to need people in suburban Milwaukee, in suburban Phoenix, here in Johnson County. Not that the state of Kansas is up for grabs, but it's the Johnson County voter that exists in many major metropolitan areas around the country who are on the fence maybe, who still don't know quite yet what they're going to do. And the more Trump lets Kamala Harris take the spotlight, the better off he's going to be. Because trust me, Kamala Harris, the more she talks, the less endearing she's going to be. I could play 3 minutes of Kamala Harris laughing and you'll turn off the radio. So I wouldn't do that for you. And I wouldn't do that to you. That would not be fair. That wouldn't be the right thing to do. But I could do it. But trust me, the more she talks, it'll be different than Joe Biden. But it will ultimately also be good for Donald Trump. And don't forget, we've got this quote on a plaque right outside the studio. And I believe we have the quote right there on the system. Let's roll one of the all-time Kamala Harris greatest hits.
It is time for us to do what we have been doing, and that time is every day.
It is time for us to do what we have been doing, and that time is every day. This is not the latest episode of Veep. This is the sitting vice president, who is now about to go through the greatest and most intense 4-week crash course that she has ever gone through in her life. And we will get 1, 2, 10, 20, 30 more of those. We have that quote on a plaque outside our studio. It is required practice at KCMO to tap the plaque before you step into the studio. I do it every morning for inspiration. Just like Notre Dame football players tap the Play Like a Champion plaque, I tap the Kamala Harris plaque. And something tells me over the next 4 weeks, we may have a few new plaques that we'll be able to create on KCMO 95.7 FM.